Chapter 1, Whispers in the Dark. The last rays of sunlight filtered through the dense canopy of pine and oak, casting long shadows across the wooden houses of Millbrook. From a distance, the village appeared as a postcard of rural tranquility, smoke curling from stone chimneys, chickens pecking lazily in dusty yards, the occasional laughter of children playing near the well in the village square. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, a subtle transformation began. Alex stood at the kitchen window of their small cottage, watching darkness creep across the forest edge like spilled ink. The wooden house, charming and quaint during daylight hours, now creaked with the language of old timber settling into night. She absently wiped her hands on her apron, noticing how the villagers hurried to complete their final tasks before darkness fully descended. "They're doing it again," she said, more to herself than to Jason, who sat at the table behind her mending a fishing net. "Doing what?" he asked, not looking up from his work. "Rushing inside. Locking up. Like they're afraid of the dark." Alex turned from the window. "We've been here 3 months, and I still don't understand why everyone behaves like the night is something to fear." Jason's fingers paused over the net. "It's just their way. Small villages have their superstitions. It's more than superstition. It's..." Alex stopped as baby Carl's cries echoed from the adjacent room. "I'll get him." The nursery was small but lovingly arranged. A handcrafted wooden crib stood beneath the window, a mobile of carved forest animals hanging above it. Carl's face was flushed, tiny fists balled in frustration as he wailed. Alex lifted him, feeling his warm weight against her shoulder. "Shoo, little one," she whispered, swaying gently. "What's troubling you tonight?" Outside, the wind picked up, rustling through the trees with a sound like whispered conversations. The forest, which had seemed welcoming and alive during the day, now loomed as a wall of impenetrable darkness beyond their window. Alex drew the curtains closed. Hours later, the oil lamp cast a weak circle of amber light in the nursery. Alex's eyes burned with exhaustion as Carl continued to cry, his wails rising and falling but never ceasing. Jason paced the small room, his shadow elongating unnaturally against the wall with each pass. "He's been crying for 3 hours, Jason said, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "Could it be colic?" Alex bounced Carl gently, her arms aching. "I've tried everything. Feeding, changing, rocking." Her voice cracked with fatigue. "Nothing works." The wind outside had grown stronger, scratching at the windows like fingernails seeking entry. The temperature in the room seemed to drop, despite the small iron stove burning in the corner. Carl's cries intensified, becoming almost frantic. "Maybe Mrs. Thorne would know what to do," Jason suggested, referring to the elderly midwife who lived near the village center. Alex shook her head. "No one in this village opens their door after dark. You know that." Carl's face was crimson now, his cries piercing the night with increasing desperation. Alex felt her composure slipping, the combination of exhaustion and helplessness overwhelming her. She pressed her lips to Carl's forehead, whispering in a voice that mixed frustration with forced humor. "Carl, sleep, or Zuzu will come." The moment the name left her lips, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The lamp flame flickered violently, then steadied into an unnatural stillness. The wind outside ceased abruptly, leaving a silence so complete it felt like pressure against the eardrums. Jason froze mid-step. "What did you just say?" His voice was barely audible. "What?" Alex looked up, confused by his sudden pallor. "That name. Where did you hear it?" Jason's eyes darted to the windows, then back to her. "I heard some of the village children saying it. It's just some boogeyman they used to scare each other." Alex frowned. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Jason crossed the room in 2 strides, his hands gripping her shoulders with unexpected intensity. "Don't ever say that name again. Especially not after dark." "You're hurting me," Alex said, shifting Carl in her arms. "And you're scaring me." "It's just a silly." "It's not silly to them," Jason hissed, lowering his voice. "Promise me, Alex." A soft tapping sound came from the window, like a twig being drawn across the glass. Both parents turned toward the noise. The curtains remained closed, but something about the quality of darkness beyond them had changed. It seemed denser, more attentive. "It's just the wind," Alex whispered, though the air remained unnaturally still. Jason moved to the window but hesitated before touching the curtain. The tapping came again, 3 distinct sounds in succession. Carl, who had been wailing continuously, suddenly fell silent. Alex looked down at her son in surprise. Carl's eyes were wide open, staring not at her but at something over her shoulder. His tiny body had gone rigid in her arms. "He stopped," she said, relief washing through her despite the strange tension in the room. Jason stepped away from the window without opening the curtain. "Let's put him down while he's quiet." Alex gently laid Carl in his crib. The baby remained unnaturally still, his eyes fixed on the ceiling. The parents backed out of the room, leaving the door slightly ajar. In their bedroom, neither spoke as they prepared for sleep. The silence between them was filled with unasked questions. As Alex slipped beneath the covers, she finally broke it. "You really believe in it, don't you? This Zuzu thing?" Jason extinguished their lamp before answering. "What I believe doesn't matter. What matters is that everyone in this village believes. And there's usually a reason for collective fear." "Superstition isn't reason," Alex murmured, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. As they drifted into uneasy sleep, neither noticed how the shadows in the corners of their rooms seemed to pulse with a life of their own, or how the crack beneath their door occasionally darkened, as if something passed by in the hallway. The sound that woke them wasn't loud. It wasn't a crash or a cry, it was subtler, more insidious. A soft, rhythmic scraping, like something being dragged across wooden floorboards, interspersed with a low, humming vibration that seemed to resonate in the bones rather than the ears. Alex's eyes snapped open, her body rigid with instinctive fear before her mind had fully processed what she was hearing. Beside her, Jason's breathing had changed. He was awake too, listening. "Do you hear that?" she whispered, the words barely audible. Jason nodded, slowly sitting up. The sound continued, scrape, drag, hum, coming from the direction of Carl's room. The air in their bedroom felt thick, resistant, as if they were moving through water rather than air when they finally rose from the bed. The hallway between their bedroom and the nursery was only a few steps long, but tonight it seemed to stretch endlessly. The floorboards beneath their feet were ice cold, despite the summer night. Their breath fogged in front of them, visible in the faint moonlight that filtered through a small window at the end of the hall. The nursery door was ajar, swaying almost imperceptibly on its hinges. The scraping sound had stopped, but the humming continued, now accompanied by something like whispered words in a language neither recognized. Jason reached for Alex's hand, finding it cold and trembling. Together they approached the door, each step requiring monumental effort, as if some force were pushing against them. "Carl?" Alex called softly, her voice breaking. The humming ceased. The silence that followed was absolute. Jason pushed the door open wider, the hinges protesting with a long, mournful creak. The nursery beyond was bathed in silvery moonlight, the curtains now wide open. The oil lamp lay on its side on the floor, unbroken but extinguished. The room was significantly colder than the hallway, their breath coming in visible plumes. The curtains fluttered gently, though there was no breeze. The window was half open, the night air seeping in like a living presence. In the crib was empty. "Carl?" Alex's voice rose sharply as she rushed forward. "Carl." The blankets were disturbed, twisted into a spiral pattern that neither parent had created. And there, starting from the center of the crib, was a thin, dark trail that glistened wetly in the moonlight. It traced a path across the wooden floor, leading directly to the open window. Jason fell to his knees beside the trail, his fingers hovering above it but not touching. In the moonlight, its color was ambiguous. It could have been blood, or something else entirely, something darker and more viscous. Alex stood frozen, her eyes fixed on the empty crib. A sound escaped her throat, not quite a scream but something more primal, the sound of a mother whose child has vanished into the night. "I didn't say it 3 times, she whispered, her voice hollow with shock. "I only said it once. I didn't say it 3 times. Jason rose unsteadily to his feet, moving to the window. The forest beyond was a wall of absolute darkness, the moonlight seeming to stop at its edge as if repelled. He leaned out, scanning desperately for any sign of movement. "Carl," he shouted, his voice echoing across the silent village. No lights appeared in neighboring windows. No doors opened in response to his cry. Alex joined him at the window, her movements mechanical. "Where is he? Who took him? Jason, where's our baby?" But even as she asked, both felt the answer surrounding them, in the unnatural stillness of the night, in the cold that seeped into their bones, in the sensation of being observed by countless unseen eyes from the darkness of the forest. Something had taken their child. Something that had been invited. They ran through the village, their bare feet slapping against the packed earth of the main road. Jason carried a lantern that cast wild, jumping shadows but seemed incapable of properly illuminating their path. The darkness between houses was absolute, as if the night itself had solidified. "Help!" Alex screamed, pounding on the door of the nearest house. "Our baby is gone. Please." No response came from within, though a curtain twitched briefly before falling back into place. They moved to the next house, and the next, meeting the same silent rejection at each. "What's wrong with these people?" Jason's voice broke with desperation. "A child is missing." The village square stood empty and silent, the well at its center a dark mouth gaping at the sky. The wind had returned, carrying sounds that might have been whispers or merely the rustling of leaves. Their voices seemed swallowed by the night, diminished to insignificance. Alex stumbled, her strength failing as the reality of their situation crashed over her. "They won't come out," she gasped. "They're too afraid." "Of what?" "What could be worse than not helping a missing child?" Jason's lantern light trembled with his shaking hands. The forest loomed around the village, a dark presence watching their futile efforts. As they stood in the square, the sensation of being observed intensified. Something was out there, among the trees. Something that was aware of them. "The forest," Alex whispered, her gaze drawn to the wall of darkness. "He's in there. I can feel it." Jason gripped her arm. "We can't go in there. Not at night. We need to wait for dawn. That's hours away." Alex wrenched free. "Our baby is out there now." She took 3 steps toward the forest edge before Jason caught her again. As they struggled, a sound emerged from the darkness between the trees, not a child's cry, but something that mimicked one, distorted and wrong, like a poor imitation created by something that had never been human. Both parents froze, staring into the impenetrable darkness. "Carl?" Alex called weakly. The sound came again, farther away now, receding deeper into the forest. Without hesitation, Alex broke free and ran toward it, Jason close behind. The moment they crossed the threshold from village to forest, the darkness enveloped them completely. Their lantern light shrank to a pathetic glow that illuminated barely a foot ahead. They searched until their voices gave out, until their feet bled, until the first gray light of dawn filtered through the canopy above. They found nothing, no trail, no sign, no further sounds. It was as if the forest had swallowed their child completely. 3 days passed in a blur of search parties, whispered conversations that ceased when they approached, and the hollow-eyed grief that threatened to consume them both. Alex hadn't slept, couldn't sleep. Jason moved through the village like a ghost, questioning, pleading, receiving only downcast eyes and mumbled condolences in return. On the morning of the 4th day, a group of woodcutters returned from the forest earlier than usual. Their faces were ashen, their movements stiff as they made their way directly to the small cottage where Alex sat staring vacantly out the window. Jason met them at the door. The eldest woodcutter, a man named Thomas who had always been kind to them, removed his cap and twisted it in gnarled hands. "We found something," he said, his voice rough with reluctance. "Near the old hollow oak, about 2 miles in." The forest was different in daylight, dappled with sunshine, alive with birdsong, almost welcoming. But as they followed the woodcutters deeper among the ancient trees, Alex felt the weight of countless eyes upon them. The birds gradually fell silent. The light seemed to dim, though the sun remained high. The hollow oak stood in a small clearing, its massive trunk split and blackened as if by lightning. The opening in its side resembled a doorway into darkness. Before it, on a bed of moss that seemed unnaturally green and lush, lay a small bundle wrapped in what Alex recognized as Carl's blanket. Her legs gave way. Jason caught her before she hit the ground, his own body trembling violently. One of the woodcutters made a sign with his hand, a gesture against evil that Alex had seen villagers use before. What remained of Carl was mercifully concealed by the blanket, but the stillness of the bundle told them everything they needed to know. A sound escaped Alex's throat, not a scream or a sob, but something ancient and terrible, the sound of grief too profound for the human voice to properly express. Jason fell to his knees beside her, gathering her in his arms as they both shattered completely. The woodcutters stood in a loose circle, their eyes fixed on the forest rather than the grieving parents, as if standing guard against something they expected to emerge from between the trees. "This is why we don't call the name," Thomas said finally, his voice barely audible over Alex's keening. "Not once. Not twice. And never 3 times. She only said it once," Jason said through his tears, a desperate defense. Thomas shook his head slowly. "Once is enough to draw its attention. Once is enough for it to listen. To wait. For what?" Alex looked up, her face ravaged by grief and dawning horror. "For hunger," another woodcutter said. "It's always hungry." As they carried the small bundle back toward the village, a wind rose suddenly, rushing through the trees with a sound like distant laughter. The branches swayed, casting shifting shadows across their path. And somewhere, just at the edge of hearing, an echo seemed to follow them, a whisper, a name, a promise. Zuzu was always listening.